Welcome to episode 133 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm talking with J.T. Mollner, who wrote and directed the film Outlaws and Angels starring Luke Wilson. It's a low-budget Western, and we talk through how he got this film produced and some of his early experiences writing and directing short films, so stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline inquiry letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So I'm now deep into production on my crime thriller feature film, The Pinch. We're shooting July 9th through July 29th, so I'm pre-recording a bunch of podcast episodes in late June, so I'll be able to keep publishing the podcast through July while I'm out shooting the film. I'm going to try and put out updates through the various social media channels, so please follow me on Twitter, and that's twitter.com/Ashley Myers, or like SYS on Facebook, that's facebook.com/sellingyourscreenplay, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/sellingyourscreenplay. And I just set up a new Instagram account, which is instagram.com/Ashley Scott Myers. I have someone who will be shooting some behind the scenes footage, so I'll try and get that posted to YouTube and Facebook as we're shooting. And I will have my cell phone and just snap some pictures, and I'll try and publish those to Twitter and Instagram. So keep an eye out for all of that and wish me luck. So I will keep new episodes coming out through July, but I won't be able to give real-time updates. So check out my various social media channels for those real-time updates on the shooting of The Pinch. And once the movie is completed, I'll be back and I'll give a full wrap-up of the entire process of shooting the film. So that's what I'm working on. So now let's get into the main segment. Welcome, JT, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe you can just give us a little bit about your background, kind of how you got into the industry and eventually worked your way up to writing and directing your latest feature film.
Yeah, I've been in LA for about 10 years. I came out here, actually going on 11 years now. I came out here in 2005. I always knew since I was a child that I was going to write. I started writing. I stapled together pieces of paper and made little books when I was 5, 6 years old, and I was reading novels at a really young age, for adult novels at a really young age, and I always knew that I was going to be a writer. I was a cinephile as a kid as well, and I was lucky enough to have an aunt named Deanna Molner who was living in LA at the time and running around with the likes of Jack Nicholson and Roman Polanski and a lot of the kind of legendary people who were making films out here in the 70s, and she turned me on to their influences, to the Ingmar Bergmans and the early Polanski films and all the great Kubrick films and all the kind of postmodern great films of European cinema, Fellini and The Bicycle Thief and all these great movies. And so I became a cinephile at a really young age, and I was also a writer who was an avid, voracious reader of novels. I always assumed, my brother, Daniel Molner, he went to UCLA and then Cal Arts Film School. I always assumed that since my brother had gone to film school, it wasn't really an option for me, even though I was a lover of cinema, to make films. I felt like one person in the family has already done it, and I didn't really think it was an option. I also figured that I had to go to film school in order to become a filmmaker. So when I first came to LA, I really focused on, I fell into some acting work, which paid the bills for me for the first couple of years, which was very lucky. But my goal was to be writing films. I was already a failed novelist who had written a book that hadn't gotten published, and I knew that film was kind of the most relevant medium of the day, and I wanted to write films. And like I said, my brother and my father, my brother who went to film school, and my father who was a cinephile himself and an actor back in the 70s. The three of them, my aunt, my brother, and my father, really turned me on to cinema and just got me so deeply into film that I became passionate about it. My mother was always supportive of my creativity, and my family was just so supportive of me being an artist that it was never a question that I was going to be an artist. It was just what was I going to be doing? And so at first I thought I'd be a novelist, and then I started writing scripts. And when I came to LA, I fell into acting. But when I was on set, I was kind of I was always disillusioned with the experience of being kind of a pawn or a tool in somebody else's vision, part of somebody else's vision. And it always frustrated me watching other directors work and kind of wanting to be doing what they were doing. And it always frustrated me reading lines from somebody else's script. So I started writing and just running around town and meeting as many people as I could. I decided about 10 years ago that I was going to write a short film, and we were going to get a director for it. And as we were interviewing directors, I was we'd raised some money. We had, $10,000 or something to shoot this short film. And we were interviewing directors, me and my producing partner at the time, who's still one of my producing partners now, Chris Ivansevic. And we probably met with, 8 to 15 directors, and I was always disappointed after the meeting because I had a very clear idea of how I wanted the movie shot. And Chris turned to me after one of those meetings and said, you should probably direct this. And it didn't occur to me till that moment that I could direct without having a degree from film school. So I kind of spent the next 10 years writing and directing my own short films, and that was my film school. I made, a pile of short films, and then I started getting hired to direct commercials and music videos, and I made some money doing that. I completely quit acting and focused all my energies on writing and directing. And that went on for a good 7 or 8 years. There were projects that I wanted to get made, that I had opportunities to get made. There were jobs that I was offered to direct feature films, but they weren't from my own scripts. And I really wanted to make sure my first feature film was as a writer and director. I didn't want to direct somebody else's material, so that was the first goal. And I also wanted to make sure my first feature film was made with known actors for a legitimate budget, because I wanted to make sure. I knew it would be low, but I didn't want to make kind of, and kudos to everybody who does this, but I didn't want to kind of make the $50,000 feature. The new there's a new wave of filmmakers that I'm part of who are just like going out there and shooting features for scraping up some cash from family members and friends and doing a Kickstarter campaign and shooting a feature on a video camera, for very little money. I put that off. I had opportunities to do that, and I just knew there was only one chance to make a first impression, and I knew we were going to do something low budget, but I wanted the low budget to be more, around the $500,000 to $1 million range, where I'd at least have something to work with. And I definitely wanted to shoot on Kodak motion picture film. So I was very patient. I wrote, I guess the moral of this entire story of my journey over the last decade is that I have this great love for directing, and I enjoy directing, and directing is where I feel the most alive and at home. Writing is difficult for me, but writing is what I'm compelled to do. It's not something I necessarily enjoy as much as directing, but it's something that if I don't do it, I feel like I'm missing something. It's something that I'll never be able to stop doing. So I'd say at core and essentially, I'm a writer first. I wrote a script called 18 Wheels and a Dozen Roses, and it was a very heavy drama, and it was something that I felt needed a very high level of actor to be in it, and I felt like it needed a bigger budget to make many locations. There was just a lot more work to be done, but I was very proud of the writing in that script, and I knew it was going to be a tough first feature to make. So instead of shopping that script, I wrote another script that I thought would be an easier first feature to make for less money, and that was Outlaws and Angels, the movie we have coming out. And my initial idea for that script was to have a number of characters interacting in a single location, so in the Wild West. But it was kind of a home invasion film, inspired in large part by Roman Polanski's early film Cul-de-sac, about a group of bandits who kind of invade this remote home. And I wanted to do that same thing, except in the Old West. And so that was kind of where that started. And I did a short film a few years back called Henry John and Little Bug that was a festival winner. And we ended up getting distribution for that short film. And I took that story and I turned it into a feature-length film. As I was writing this feature that I'd planned to take place all in one location and more like a play, became much larger in scope. And the movie became bigger and more expensive to shoot. Mm-hmm. So when I hit the streets with this movie, we needed a little more than we initially thought we needed, by hundreds of thousands. But I was determined to make it. You know, the entire reason that I wrote Outlaws and Angels was to have it be my first feature. It wasn't just one project kind of sitting around. We really wanted to get made. And the first person I went to, Chris Ivansevic, my producing partner, and I were just part of the project from the beginning. And the first person we went to approach to produce the movie was Roseanne Korenberg. And Roseanne Korenberg is the VP of Acquisitions at Miramax, but she famously produced Half Nelson with Ryan Gosling and Hard Candy with Ellen Page. It was her breakout movie. Both of those movies went to Sundance, and Ryan Gosling was nominated for an Oscar for Half Nelson. And I just always was very respectful of Roseanne's work, and she had a lot of integrity as a producer and always aligned herself with critically acclaimed, interesting projects, risky projects. So we took this movie to her, and she said to me, before she read it, she said, I don't really want to produce any indie features anymore. She said, it's really tough and kind of out of that game, and I'm in the studio world. She said, I do have it in my contract where I'm allowed to carve out a little time to produce a movie or two a year on the side, but she said, I'm just not really interested in it. She said, I'll help you out, but I don't want to produce this. And I said, well, just please read it. She read the script, and she called me about a week later, and she said, I don't know if this is going to be a mistake, but I would like to produce your movie. So that was very exciting. Roseanne Korenberg she's not an investor. She's a creative producer. I mean, she literally, helps build the blocks of the film. And the film wouldn't be what it is without her, but she doesn't have money in her pocket to finance movies. That's not her role. So we had to go get financing, and the first group of investors we approached were, she kind of brought the first bit of, she substantiated us in a major way by being a part of the project. She legitimized the project. We had a real producer on the film who produced big movies, and she, ended up closing the deal on the first bit of money for the movie. And the first chunk of money for the movie, which was about half the full budget of the film, came in very fast. We had some partners on some other projects, on some short films that we did, who really believed in us, as a team, and we're ready to come in with Roseanne on board. And so they came in, and we had the first half of the money. And of course, we thought the second half of the money would come very quickly, but it didn't. We went to a lot of people, and they said, we have the rest of the money for you, but we need you to have certain actors attached to this film. So after that, it was kind of just, another year of reaching out to cast with casting director Chadwick Struck and our other producers, and just attaching talent that would satisfy new investors, but also creatively satisfy me. And that was a very enlightening and interesting process. But that took about another year, and Chad Michael Murray was the first attachment, and that was such an interesting time for me because Chad Michael Murray wasn't who I'd envisioned for the lead role in this movie. Henry, the lead outlaw in this film, was written as a 50-year-old handsome and grizzled man, and Chad Michael Murray's in his mid-30s and looks like he's in his 20s and is a very good-looking, clean-cut guy, and he's always been known as a heartthrob, and so I was very leery about that, and we met together, and Chad and I just creatively fell in love with each other during the meeting. He really understood the script better than any other actors I'd met with, and he was determined to do a career-changing performance, to really, really take a U-turn and change his image completely for this role. And he dedicated his life to it for a good 6 months. And I couldn't be happier that he's the lead in the film. And then after him came Francesca Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's daughter, Frances Fisher's daughter. She is a bona fide movie star. She's incredibly talented and charismatic. And we were lucky enough to convince her legendary mother, Frances Fisher, to come aboard and do a role in the film. So that was amazing. The cast just started kind of coming together, and then we cast Keith Loneker in the movie, who's been in a lot of great films by George Clooney, and just he's got a huge, really nice resume, and he's just an incredible guy and an amazing actor. And Madison Beatty ended up in the movie from The Master, and Benjamin Button, and now she's on Aquarius. And we got Nathan Russell in the film, a character actor I'd been working with for years, and Terry Polo, of course, who's just a legend in her own right, and Ben Browder, who is known for his Farscape fame as a sci-fi action hero, and came in and did a true character role. So we got this cast kind of together, and the last piece of cast that came aboard was Luke Wilson, who kind of was the last cementing element in making the investors happy, and also just another incredible actor who we cast against type in the role that he's in, and he came in committed and ready to go, and then I was also lucky enough to have my father in the movie, playing the sheriff at the beginning of the film. So I got my dad in the film too. So it was just, we got this great cast together. We became a big happy family. Matthew Irving, our cinematographer, came on to shoot the movie, and this package, we had the last bit of money, but this package altogether made those investors happy enough to say, okay, let's shoot it now. And we got to go shoot it, and we shot the entire movie in 3 weeks. So we shot it in 3 weeks in New Mexico, and that's it. And then we went to the Sundance Film Festival.
Nice. So we'll circle back to that in a second. So let me just touch on some of the things you said about the short films. You mentioned your first short, you had raised a little bit of money. I think you said $10,000. Maybe you can talk about trying to get money for a short film. Obviously, short films typically don't make any money back, so they're incredibly difficult to find people because it's really not much of an investment. But maybe you can talk a little bit about that. How did you go about getting money for that first short film?
I'm one of the few people who I know, of my contemporaries and my friends who are in the industry, who hasn't maxed out a credit card on a short film or spent my own money on a short film. We did a little exercise called Sunday Evening years ago, me and some friends of mine. And that was almost like my version of a student film. We shot for 2 days and just shot a couple scenes, and I learned a little bit about directing during that, and actually that was the only time that I technically spent a little of my own money. I think I think I spent $300, and my partner Nick Terry, my manager, spent $300, I think, and we went and made a really bad little piece of cinema, but a lesson learned for under $1,000. But from when I made my first real short film, which was The Red Room, we were going to shoot on film with a full crew. I really wanted to make a legitimate piece, and I had to raise, like I said, I had to raise about $10,000 for that. So that movie was. Chris Ivansevic and I just racked our brains trying to figure out how to raise money for a short film. And, we did on every one of our short films, we did it pretty much the same way. We did that movie and Sugartown and Flowers in December and Henry John and The Little Bug. All those short films were raised through a combination of crowdfunding and actor support. So, we kind of treated it like a company. We'd get actors involved, who wanted to work with us, and we would split the money. We'd get people involved in the film to come in and bring pieces of the funding for us. And then we also, reached out to friends in town who wanted producer credits on IMDb, who wanted to come aboard and be part of a film, who had just gotten to town and hadn't been part of a film. We just got really creative because we didn't have any funds of our own at the time, but it was all done through essentially crowdfunding. Once we got to our second movie, it was a real crowdfunding. It was Indiegogo or Kickstarter. But even a couple of years before those were really prevalent sites, we found our own ways within our networks to essentially crowdfund these movies. And you just got to, you've got to be, I think it's like being in sales. I mean, you've got to be, you've got to have no fear and no shame and you've got to be willing to walk up to people that you don't know very well and say, will you invest in me? And a lot of the people who did invest in my short films, I mean, especially the group who came in and helped me with half of the investment on my first short film, were just people who wanted to produce movies, and they had no movies on their resume. So, they may have had one or two, but not a lot, So we said, produce this short film, help us with the financing with this short film, and we will, we'll involve you when we move on to make features, and we did stay together on a lot of things. So I think it's just building partnerships, building a network, and really being loyal to each other and moving through the industry together. And you'll find partners early on if you present your case like that.
Yeah. And so then how did you meet, you said Roseanne, was it Kornberg who helped you produce this movie? How did you meet her and get that introduction? I'm sure she's overwhelmed with lots of people who want her to produce their script. So how did you get to the point where she actually took you seriously and read the script and then got back to you?
Yeah, these are great questions. I actually would have loved to have heard the answers to questions like this before I got started. So that's a very good question. With Roseanne, it was really interesting. We had a movie. I wrote a feature film that I kind of left out of that overlong story that I just told. But I had a feature film called Ice Cream Man. It was a kind of a strange art house, self-aware slasher movie that I wrote in 2005, and it was kind of from the David Cronenberg school of horror. It was a horror film, but it had kind of an intellectual side, and it was self-aware, and it delved into the cycle of violence and all that. And we wanted to get that film made, and it was a good time to get a brutal horror film made because a lot of them were coming out at the time. And so we had a cast for that movie, and we optioned the film to Capitol Films and a number of other companies. The movie was at MGM for a little while. It was at all these different places over the course of a couple of years, and we had some money to make that movie, and I wanted to. At that time, I was looking for a producer for that movie to raise the rest of the money. So at that time, I was watching. This was back in 2007 or something. I was watching a film called Hard Candy that I talked about earlier with Ellen Page, and I happened to be watching this film at home on DVD, and I watched the special features, and part of the special features were telling me how to get a film financed, and the moral of this one kind of little blip in this group of special features was that the this group of people who were making the movie. The producers attached a director, attached some cast, and then they went out and they found a producer's rep who could raise the money for them. And the producer's rep that they mentioned in this small documentary piece was Roseanne Korenberg. So that fascinated me. I said, wow, they went directly to her and she got them the money. So she must be the type of person who can get money. And she worked on this movie, which is an amazing film. And she worked on Half Nelson. So I just thought, what a great person to work with. And her whole function is finding money for your movies. So I just called my lawyer the next day, and my manager. And I said, do either one of you know how to get a hold of this person? And I'm pretty sure it was my manager, Nick, who just went online and found an email address for Roseanne and reached out to her and pitched the film. And so I met her that way. She decided to come aboard as a producer on that film. And so I knew her then. And then, there was obviously the financial kind of collapse, and everybody, went out of business in this country in those couple of years to follow. That was 2008, 2009 coming up, and a lot of films were victims of that. And unfortunately, that film was a victim of those circumstances that were beyond everybody's control. Some studios went out of business, and so that movie never ended up happening. But I remained in contact with Roseanne and had a relationship with Roseanne, and she ended up being a mentor and a figure who really helped guide me through the industry over the years. So I had easy access to her when I had a project ready because we were good friends. I would say to really summarize what I think is most important when you come out here is meeting like-minded people who have done a little more than you have, making a connection. Meet your Roseanne Korenberg. Meet somebody out there who has done things that you admire and who you're like-minded with and who you get along with, and find a mentor. She really took me under her wing, and she ended up being the reason that we got the match lit and the first spark to make this movie. So and it was after a 7 or 8 year relationship. So I just say your relationships matter more than anything, and relationships with the right people, not just with anybody, with the right people, with people with integrity and people who really believe in what you do.
Yeah. And so let's back it up just even before that. You're talking about this script. At that, when you contacted Roseanne, it sounds like you already had a manager and a lawyer. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you got your manager from the first set. Was that just a function of doing all these shorts and submitting shorts to him, and he took an interest because he liked them? How did you actually get that manager?
So, I came to town, like I said, in 2005, and I was actively, I had about 10 people who had moved to town around the same time as I did, from Las Vegas, Nevada. And when I came out here, my first goal was to get some sort of representation. Everybody wants representation. And I knew that a manager should come first because a manager will help you get an agent. And I knew that I wanted to get a good agent. So I had a friend who was an actress who had some early success when she first came out here and got some big roles right away. And she was repped by a manager who represented actors as well as writers and directors. So I basically asked her for an intro to her manager. That was Nicholas Terry. And at the time, he was at Unique Talent Group, and he was representing Stellan Skarsgård and Fred Ward and a number of other interesting guys. And I went in there and had a meeting with him, and he actually, wanted to read one of my scripts, and he read it, and he said, well, I'd love to help you get this made. And I said, well, you can't be involved in the movie unless you manage me. So I kind of goaded him into it early on before I had anything going for me. And so I signed with him then, and he's still my manager now through all the craziness. I've had a lot of changes over the last decade, and he's a trusted confidant. So I think you just, once again, it's, relationships. It was relationships with who I knew who was working. You got to ask people to introduce you to their reps, people who don't feel like you're doing the same thing as they are, feel like you're competing with them. You got to find people who you trust, who don't feel threatened by you, to introduce you to their contacts and help you out. Nobody will get through the Hollywood thing without allies and without help.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you know the release schedule for Outlaws and Angels? Do you know when it'll be hitting VOD and theaters and stuff?
Yeah, Outlaws and Angels is coming out in theaters on July 15th.
Okay.
So it'll be out in less than a month. And you can look it up online. I think we've got, it's going to be playing in select cities. I think it'll be in 11 cities. LA and New York, of course, and then 9 other major cities. And it'll be out on DVD about a month later, but it will be simultaneously out on VOD, on Amazon. So if you're not in one of the cities it's playing, you can order it. However, I would recommend, if you're near a city it's playing, trying to make it there, because we shot on 35 millimeter film. A few of the theaters are screening on film prints, thanks to Steve Bellamy, the president of Kodak, and Lorette Bale and Sasha Rice over there. They've been really, really great allies of ours, and so you'll be able to see it maybe on a film print, and definitely, even if it's not on a film print, you'll be able to see a beautiful 35 millimeter celluloid image capture projected on the big screen, and we underexpose the film. It's got a really nice grainy texture, and it really feels like a movie that's pulled out of the vault. We patterned the look of the movie after Altman's masterpiece, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. We really wanted it to look like an old photograph, and I think we achieved that. So it's a really good experience to see this film on the big screen, and I hope people make it to the theaters to see it.
Yeah, for sure. So I just like to wrap up the interviews by asking the guest to just share his Twitter handle or Facebook page or whatever he's comfortable, just for the people who want to just follow along and kind of keep up with your career.
Yeah, of course. You can follow me, my personal page on Twitter, which is JT Molner. That's JTMOLLNER. And I pretty much only talk about film on there, so I'd love to have anybody follow me. And then I'm also on my production company is on Facebook. It's under JT Molner's No Remake Pictures. It's my production company name is No Remake Pictures, and all the information on Outlaws and Angels, as well as information on casting and crewing up and all that stuff, we announce on our Facebook and Twitter page first, and then of course there's noremake.com, which is my website.
Perfect. I will round that up and put it in the show notes so people can click over to it. JT, I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me today. Excellent interview. I wish you a lot of luck with this film.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We provide analyses on features and television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write a logline and synopsis for you. You can add this service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast from my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. That's the show. Thank you for listening.